I would like to say, when you go to see a movie at a theater, this is a social as well as a cultural experience, providing entertainment for moviegoers of all ages. Audiences are always looking for the next level of cinematic artistry. They want to be wooed and inspired and immersed in their visual experience. And if they're going to take time to visit a theater, they want it to be and give them something that they can't get back at home. This is the value of offering premium cinema experiences, giving people a good reason to choose to go to the movies. The world is growing to be more technologically oriented every year and is witnessing a demand from consumers for brands to offer the latest, most advanced experiences available. The desirability of providing sufficient illumination for the convenience and comfort of the audience, if this can be accomplished without perceptible loss of quality in the projected picture, is obvious. The ultimate experience involves viewing cinematic masterpieces where you can see and hear every detail the way the filmmaker intended it to be. And it's the excitement in knowing that unlike any other experience at home, you feel and experience this. Therefore, it's time for the cinema industry to focus on putting audiences' experience first. To address us on the various illumination options for cinema, please join me in welcoming on stage Dr. Don Shaw, Senior Director, Cinema Sales, Asia Pacific, Christie Digital. Let's welcome him with a huge round of applause, please.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm very pleased to be here this afternoon to discuss illumination options for cinema. And it struck me when I saw the title on the screen, it's really not that clear what I'm talking about. It's actually a discussion on screen illumination. So lasers, laser phosphor, LED, that type of thing. And it's going to be a very technical presentation, so I apologize in advance for that. Before I talk too much about anything technical, though, I like to start off with some market data. And this slide here shows a snapshot of all the digital cinema projectors ever sold in the world by all the manufacturers. So you can see it started out in around 2005, started out as a bit of a trickle, as any new technology does. And we see something happen here. 2009, 2010, James Cameron releases a little film called Avatar. And exhibitors around the world realized that if they want to show it the way James Cameron intended it to be seen, they had to install digital projectors to show the 3D. So that really kicked off the global transition from film to digital. So through 2010, 2011, 2012, there was some great virtual print fee programs from Hollywood that kept fueling the transition to digital. And by the year 2015, the world had essentially reached a saturation point where there's no more film projectors in operation in cinemas. And Christie has firsthand knowledge of this because we sell lamps for digital and film projectors, and suddenly we're not selling any more lamps for film projectors. So we have a good pulse on what's going on in the market. So by 2015, all screens digital. That's about 165,000 screens, plus or minus 5,000, depending on who you talk to. We also know that there's digital cinema projectors out there in other venues, in other large screen venues outside of cinema. And what we're seeing now is about 4 to 5% year-over-year growth in cinema screen count globally. But you'll see there's one little blip on this chart here. What should have been an orderly reduction down to some low point was actually disrupted a little bit by the Chinese growth. So over 10,000 screens, new cinema screens were built in China last year. And we're seeing another similar trend this year. It's not going to be quite as many, but it's going to be still a huge amount of screen count growth. Right now we're also seeing conversion in this country, some e-cinema screens over to D-cinema screens, and we heard a little bit about that yesterday. But what I'm seeing in the next few years is the digital cinema market, from a manufacturer's perspective, is going to shrink a little bit for us. And we're going to hit this low point. And what's going to happen then is exhibitors are going to start to replace their digital projectors. So that's what Christie's looking at now. We're really looking at the future, making sure that we're prepared when exhibitors decide they need that next generation of digital cinema projectors. So most of this discussion is going to be on lasers. Right now, all the cinema projector manufacturers are demonstrating or selling laser projectors. I can count over 20 different models of laser projectors being announced or available or being demonstrated right now. There's a lot of hype right now. We're all doing it. Aggressive marketing, exaggerated claims. The term laser projector is almost this perfect thing in some minds. And we're making promises of the best picture quality on screen, the lowest cost of ownership, future-proofing your investment. What about that elusive all-laser multiplex that's going to bring audiences to your cinema? I'm sure you've heard all these things from us. Some of it's true, some of it's not, but it's not true all the time. I'm here to help shed some light on that, try to provide some clarity on what a laser projector is. And I think the most important distinction, if you can walk away from this talk today, is to know the difference between two types of laser projectors. One being a laser phosphor projector, and the other one being an RGB laser projector. Not all laser projectors are created equal. Before I talk about that though, I think I should talk about what makes a great picture in cinema. A few obvious things. It's got to be bright. No one likes a dim image on the cinema screen. You've got to have contrast ratio, so the difference between your brightest points on the screen and your black areas on the screen, the more the better. And that's how we differentiate the details on screen. Of course, you've got to have great color. We talked a little bit yesterday about high dynamic range. I'm not going to go into detail, but high dynamic range is the right combination of brightness, contrast, and color. And this is a term you're going to hear over and over again in the cinema world going forward. Standards will be developed within the next 5 years, I would say. Cinema projectors will have to have a high dynamic range capability. Of course, the last thing on the list here, resolution. Lots of 2K projectors, moving to 4K projectors. Important? Absolutely. So right now there's 4 different technologies for illuminating a cinema screen. You have Xenon lamps, Mercury lamps, laser phosphor, and RGB laser. So I'm going to try to provide some details on these, talk about this cinema illumination roadmap, which is more of a roundabout, in my opinion. But I know it's confusing. I know that exhibitors are hearing all this marketing from all of us, and let's just try to boil it down to the science, figure out what this is really all about. Before I do that, though, I think it's important to address something called color gamut. So this chart here is supposed to represent all the colors that can be perceived by the human visual system. In reality, it's representing all the colors that this projector is capable of reproducing, which is quite a lot since it's a cinema projector. But what we do to characterize a display device is we draw a triangle on this color chart. And the innermost triangle is something called the Rec. 709 standard. That's the HD TV standard. It came out a few decades ago, and it's the color gamut of a typical HD TV or a conference room type projector or a computer monitor. Pretty standard color gamut. The next triangle out is called the DCI P3 color gamut. So that's the color gamut of a digital cinema projector like the one at the back of the room there. So what you can see is that it's got significantly more green coverage, but also red. In the lower right corner there, you see the red color there. That's the part that we can really see. That's what differentiates a digital cinema projector from a lower quality or a conference room style projector. The biggest triangle on there is a little bit of an aspirational color gamut. It was put together by the TV industry as the ultra high definition color standard called the Rec. 2020 gamut. It's interesting that it's a TV standard, but the only technology in the world capable of reproducing Rec. 2020 is a laser projector. One other little detail before I talk in detail about illumination. Something inside almost every digital cinema projector is something called a yellow notch filter. So one of the most difficult parts of building a projector is making red, the red color. Think of the Coca-Cola brand red. If you see it on a projected image, very difficult to reproduce that color. It's going to come out as an orange color, especially if you saw it beside an actual Coca-Cola logo on a printed can or a box. So what we do as projector manufacturers, we put something in a projector called a yellow notch filter. It's a simple glass optical element. It removes yellow light from the emission spectrum. And in removing yellow light, you increase the relative contribution of green and, more importantly, red light. But anytime you remove light from a projected image, you reduce your brightness. We don't want to reduce brightness. We want our projectors to be as much bang for their buck. So our engineers are constantly trying to tune these yellow notch filters to try to save as much brightness and put as much red back into the image. Every cinema projector has a yellow notch filter in it, except for an RGB laser projector. So that's an important point, and I'm going to come back to that. Let's talk about xenon lamps for cinema. These have been the primary illumination source in cinema since the early 70s, almost 50 years. Exhibitors are familiar with xenon lamps. They have an evenly distributed, broad spectrum white light that closely matches the DCI specification. They're reliable and familiar for exhibitors. A xenon lamp-based projector does have a yellow notch filter though. Inside one of our projectors, there's a yellow notch filter in that projector at the back of the room. It wastes about 9% of the light coming out of the lamp. Just converts it to heat, trying to reproduce those DCI red colors that we're trying to hit. One of the weaknesses of this technology, very high power consumption. Our biggest xenon lamp-based projectors use 7 kilowatts of power. In some bigger screens, there's 2 of those projectors, using 14, almost 15 kilowatts of power to light up that screen. But the biggest issue, I think, that's going to limit the advancement of xenon lamps in cinema is brightness. It's impossible to light up a huge screen with a single xenon lamp-based projector, especially for 3D. Mercury lamps hit the cinema scene a few years back, offering a lower cost alternative to xenon lamps. Mercury lamps have a longer life and they cost less than xenon lamps. But there's a technical issue with the Mercury lamp-based projector. And if you see in this emission spectrum here, the xenon is the blue line, Mercury is the red line here. You can see this spike in the emission spectrum of a Mercury lamp. That's yellow. That's the yellow color. So if you think about our discussion on yellow notch filters, we have to stick one of those in a Mercury lamp-based projector. But in this case, it wastes 30 to 40% of the light in the cinema projector. So it's a very inefficient illumination source when you're trying to hit the DCI standard. Another issue with Mercury lamps, the color rendition tends to change as the lamp ages. That's certainly not acceptable in cinema as far as I'm concerned. And a much higher chance of failure than a xenon lamp-based projector. Christie's the only manufacturer that does not have a Mercury lamp-based projector. We don't feel that it's the right solution for our customers. Now here's a technology that we've all heard a lot about. We discussed it quite a bit yesterday, something called laser phosphor projection. So I'm going to try to explain this in simple terms. A laser phosphor projector, it's actually quite a neat idea. It's producing white light using blue lasers only. So here's how we do this. We take these blue lasers here, bounce it off of a yellow phosphor wheel. So that effectively turns blue laser light into yellow light. So if you recall back to your primary colors, yellow is the additive mixture of red and green. So if you can picture this yellow light here as red and green, add some more blue in from direct blue lasers, and you have white light. It gives you RGB mixture as white light going into the projector optics. So the reasons you do this is because blue lasers are a mature technology. They've been around for decades. Think of Blu-ray players, gaming machines, everywhere that blue lasers are. So because they're a mature technology, they're much cheaper than green and red devices. So much lower cost to make a projector using only blue lasers. We also have the benefit using blue lasers that you don't need to chill them subambient. So with today's current generation of red and green lasers, you need to chill them below room temperature, which is why you see a big chiller beside a laser projector. So we've seen multiple manufacturers investing huge amounts of R&D money into laser phosphor projectors. We've seen projectors in the pro venue and now in cinema as high as 30,000 lumens. So it's certainly a real technology for lighting up big screens. And the primary advantage to a laser phosphor projector, in fact, what I'm going to show you, the only advantage to a laser phosphor projector is no lamps to change. So before I move off of this slide, I do want to point out one thing. At the bottom here, anytime you're changing one type of energy to another type of energy, there's a conversion efficiency. So in this case, you're changing blue light into yellow light at about 32% efficiency. So that means 68% of that laser energy is being turned into heat. And that's why we have to spin that wheel. You have to spin it through a coolant to keep it cool. Otherwise, it would just burn up. So let's look at laser phosphor for cinema. So that's the business we're in here. So natively, the color from a laser phosphor projector is both red and green deficient. So if you think back to my color triangles, it's actually below the smallest triangle that you would expect to have for a high definition television or an office or a conference room type projector. So manufacturers put in a yellow notch filter. In this case, wastes between 40 and 50% of the light, converted to heat. Due to the nature of a laser phosphor projector, due to the spot size and the aton, due to the amount of light that we can collect in the light engine, you'll never achieve a high contrast image with laser phosphor. The technology just doesn't make that possible. So that means that laser phosphor is not a technology that will ever be high dynamic range. It's not a technology that we'll be installing in the future as our high dynamic range solution for cinema. And also, this is a huge consideration for exhibitors. The lifetime of a laser phosphor projector, typically rated at 30,000 hours to 50% brightness. So that's about 7-8 years tops in a typical cinema. But you have to think about that 50% brightness. That's half the brightness. So long before that 7 or 8 years, that laser phosphor projector is not going to be bright enough for the screen that it was initially installed on unless you install it with tons of headroom. So I have an example here of a laser phosphor projector versus a lamp-based projector. I know there's a lot going on in this chart, but the green line here is a typical Xenon lamp-based projector. And we're looking at the 20,000 lumen class because this is where really most cinema screens fall. So the green line here is a Christie CP2220, one of the most efficient projectors ever built. And you can see the brightness goes down and up as we change lamps throughout the lifetime of that projector. In this case, it's a pretty efficient lamp. It lasts about 2,500 hours, I believe. The blue line is the brightness of a laser phosphor projector. And you can see that's only going in one direction throughout its lifetime. But what's alarming here is after a couple years, it drops below 11 foot Lamberts. It drops below the DCI specification. So we believe that people who have invested in this type of projector will probably operate it for a few years, and then about halfway through its lifetime, they're going to have to make a huge investment again. They're going to have to change their laser module inside that projector. Now that's a significant cost. So what we've done is we've done some total cost of ownership analysis of laser phosphor versus the reliable lamp-based projectors that we've been using in our cinemas for 10 years on the digital side, 50 years on the film side. Again, looking at 20,000 lumen class projectors, and I think an exhibitor wants their projector to last for 40,000 hours, not 30,000 hours. So that's a 10-year investment. 4,000 hours a year for 10 years, that's about 11, 12 hours a day operating in a cinema. Pretty typical usage case. So in this corner, I'm going to show you an example of a laser phosphor projector, the only one in the 20,000 lumen class, versus our Christie CP2220. And I've got some sample numbers here. These are global average selling prices, you might have some slightly different numbers in mind, but it's not going to change the outcome that much. So we make an assumption on purchase price between these two projectors, and these are US dollars, folks. 49 for the laser phosphor, 35 for the Xenon projector. And we make some assumptions about laser phosphor projection replacement in year 6. We all know what lasers cost, all the manufacturers do, so that's going to be about $15,000 6 years from now. So I think in all fairness, we have to do a net present value calculation on that. So if we assume 8% cost of capital, that $15,000 future investment in laser phosphor, new lasers, it's really about $9,500 in today's money. Let's do the same comparison for lamps. So if we look at 15 lamps over the lifetime, again at $600 ASP, take a net present value of that, we're looking at about $6,500 worth of lamps for that projector. We can't overlook power consumption. Laser phosphor projectors use less power than a Xenon lamp-based projector. So just looking up some simple power consumption from various websites and doing an estimate at 20 cents per hour for power consumption, we do a net present value calculation. You can see that the laser phosphor projector does indeed come in at a lower cost of electrical power over its lifetime. But if you add up all those numbers, the outcome is pretty clear. There's no cost advantage to operating a laser phosphor projector over a lifetime versus a Xenon lamp-based projector. I did a similar total cost of ownership analysis for smaller laser phosphor projectors. Again, in the 5,000 to 6,000 lumen class of projectors, again over a 40,000 hour operating lifetime. Going through similar numbers, same result on the bottom line. In this case, it's not as dramatic of a difference. You know, laser phosphor has a better place in the lower end of cinema for smaller screens, but still, no cost savings. We can't find a way to make laser phosphor projectors make sense from a cost of ownership perspective. So here's what we think about laser phosphor for cinema in 2017. It's a reasonable choice for small cinema screens, maybe low usage screens, an art house or some kind of facility where you're operating maybe a couple films a day, but certainly not a heavy usage cinema. Or a remote site where it's difficult to get lamps out there, you know, to train people to change lamps, might be a decent choice for you. But Christie's opinion is awareness and education is critical. You're using a laser phosphor projector, you can expect a lower image quality on screen versus your Xenon lamps. Your color's not going to be as good, and your brightness is going to drop off rapidly. So expect a lower image quality with laser phosphor versus lamps. But more importantly, understand the cost comparison. Talk to your CFO, talk to your accountants, talk to your business people. Compare the cost of operating that laser phosphor projector versus the cost of changing lamps. Don't just listen to the hype and the marketing. Do the math. Let's talk about RGB laser for cinema. I think we all know that RGB laser projectors are the highest brightness projectors for cinema. We can easily put 60,000 lumens through a single projector head. In fact, in our factory, we've put over 100,000 lumens out of a single projector with no smoke. So this is really the best way to light up a 3D screen with an RGB laser projector. The best color performance. I mentioned earlier that an RGB laser projector is the only display technology in the world capable of producing the Rec 2020 color gamut. The best contrast ratio performance. This is the only way we'll ever get to high dynamic range in cinema. True high dynamic range in cinema is going to require an RGB from a cinema projector. So we're targeting this at mainstream cinema auditoriums. If you're replacing a Series 1 or a Series 2 projector, or if you're doing a new cinema build, the next generation of RGB laser projectors is the right choice. This is not just for premium screens. It's going to become a reality. It's called the CP4325 RGB. The first model out's 23,000 lumens at 4K resolution. We have commercial information available now, of course, and we'll be shipping it at the beginning of next year. This is coming very soon to a cinema near you. Another topic we talked about yesterday. What about LED screens for cinema? So this was a big talk at CinemaCon 2017 this year. For those of you who don't know what an LED screen is, those are the screens that are flanking the hallway into the exhibition center here. I hope you had a chance to have a good look at those and assess for yourself what you think that technology is going to mean to cinema. But certainly, since CinemaCon, there's been a lot of headlines. A simple Google search brings up dozens of headlines about this new LED screen technology and how it's going to sweep cinema. Let's take a quick look at that. So I think that's a worthy discussion point here. There's a lot of benefits here. Brightness. LED screens can easily be 10 times brighter than a cinema projector. Great black levels, great contrast ratio. If it's designed for cinema, it can easily achieve the DCI color standards. So this could be that path to brightness, contrast, and color that bring HDR within reach in cinema. But let's look at some of the challenges as well. Reliability and aging concerns. I'm sure as you walk down that hallway into the exhibition center, you could see the flaws on that LED screen. You could see the tiles, the lines between the modules. These are things that happen to LED screens as they age. They also block sound. Anyone who's built a cinema knows where the speakers go in a cinema, right behind the screen. You put it above the screen, and the voices are coming from above the screen. That's just not going to feel like cinema. It's not going to feel right. So that's a huge challenge that has to be overcome. Visible seams and pixel structure. If you're too close to an LED screen, you can see the pixels. It's like looking through a screen door. If you want to do 3D on an LED screen, you're looking at an active 3D glasses solution. Again, this becomes a cost for the exhibitor in terms of having to purchase the glasses, having to deal with theft, breakage, cleaning them after each use, maintenance, changing batteries in active glasses, all things that exhibitors just don't want to do right now. Power, weight. If you've got a screen that's 10 times the brightness, it's going to use more power than a projector for sure. So lots of challenges to overcome. But these are just technical challenges, and I think we can overcome them as an industry. But let's look at some numbers. So last time I checked, exhibitors are in the business to make money. Newsflash. This is a money-making business. It's always about return on investment. I would argue that a properly installed and specified lamp projector is good enough for most audiences. We talked about PLFs in an earlier presentation today. I think what we found, and this is a global thing, it doesn't matter how great your projector is, how great your seats are, your audio, an audience will pay a little more for a premium experience. They're not going to pay double or triple. They're not going to help you pay for a huge investment in projection or audio equipment by doubling or tripling your ticket price. It just doesn't happen. Whoa. Oh no. Can we advance the slide manually to about 27? A little quicker than that? Sorry folks, I'm not sure what happened here. So we were talking about numbers. We were talking about return on investment. So audiences will pay more for a premium experience. We've been trying to sell these RGB laser projectors for the last 4 years to exhibitors now at about 5 to 10 times the price of a Xenon lamp-based projector. I'll be the first to admit that today's RGB laser projectors have a pretty elusive return on investment for exhibitors, and those that have tried them will agree with me. They're charging a little more, they can't charge a lot more. Tough to get that money back, which is why we've only sold a handful of them to cinemas around the world. Less than 0.3% of cinema screens around the world are running RGB laser projectors. But the next generation of RGB laser projectors are going to see a dramatic drop in cost. Maybe 1 to 2 times the price of a Xenon lamp-based projector. So when you think about the cost of operating that Xenon lamp-based projector, the cost of those lamps over the lifetime, you're going to have a premium experience on screen. The numbers are going to make sense with the next generation of RGB laser projectors. But we're talking about LED for cinema here. Our calculations right now put an LED screen at about 15 to 20 times the price of a projector. Should we do more math on this? Or should we sum up? So my predictions, lamp-based projectors will disappear from new installations within the next 3 or 4 years. We'll absolutely continue to support these as long as they're in use, though. Mercury lamps should never have existed in cinema. Pretty simple statement. Laser phosphor, a short-term technology, only for some screens, definitely not your premium screen solution. Today's RGB laser projectors, still best for your large premium screens. If you've got a 100-foot screen to light up, today's RGB laser projectors are the way to go. But the next generation of RGB laser projectors, these will soon dominate in the mainstream mid-size screens in that 20,000 lumen sweet spot. And by 2020, almost all new cinema projectors will be RGB laser. Direct view LED, still a lot of challenges to overcome, both technically and from a business case perspective. So this concludes my presentation. I'll be around for the next couple hours. If anyone wants to ask any questions, please feel free to approach. Thank you.